Hello and welcome back to Claudio Visual, Art and Visual Culture with me, Claudia. Now, in this episode, I thought I would discuss some art and visual culture from the city of Berlin, Germany, and particularly the East Side Gallery, which is found there. Now, why am I talking about Berlin and why am I talking about Germany? Well, it's because I recently returned from a little city break to Berlin. Now, as some of you might know, I'm usually off gallivanting around Italy, Spain, recently the US quite a few times too. And really, I had hitherto neglected Germany and surrounding countries to an extent. In any case, this was recently rectified when I took a little trip to Berlin to see really what kind of art and visual culture lay in store. Now, I didn't do a wild amount of research prior to visiting, which made it all the more exciting really to discover museums, galleries, just general architecture, the general lay of the land, the kind of urban scape, the way that the natural features of the landscape interacted with the urban, and all of these things that it's nice to do when you visit a city for the first time. And yes, well, a monument that particularly struck me was this East Side Gallery. Now, I'll go into a bit of detail in a moment about it, and we'll have a look at some images together, which are from this monument that's so eye-catching and exciting. But firstly, I'll also say that I would recommend absolutely quite a few other different monuments and museums and what have you in Berlin. There really is a lot to do. For example, there's the Gemälde Gallery, which I obviously had to visit. As some of you might be aware, it houses some really exciting works by old masters like Caravaggio and Raphael. Obviously, that's sort of my bread and butter, so I couldn't visit Berlin without stopping there. In Alexanderplatz, there's the TV tower. There are also some museums such as the German Spy Museum, which is really quite stimulating. It's a real mixture of multi-sensory experiences. The exhibits are very interactive. It's very much a dynamic kind of museum experience there, very intriguing from a visual cultural point of view. At the same time, there are a lot of historical sites which have become visual cultural sites of interest these days. For example, the Berlin Story Bunker, which uses text and image to take one through the journey from the beginnings of the rise of National Socialism through the Second World War into the aftermath and what have you. Very much a more somber kind of experience, but invaluable nonetheless, as I'm sure you can imagine if you haven't already been yourselves. The same sort of thing with the topography of terrace. Again, a site that's really appealing from a visual cultural perspective to disseminate information about history and what happened, in 20th century history. So anywhere you go really in Berlin, you've got this kind of palimpsest of cultures, of architecture, even the Ampelmann, the Ampelmännchen, is the pedestrian symbol from East Germany, and you can see him on the pedestrian crossings in certain places. A lot of really different aspects of German culture, of Berlin culture, all kind of interacting in art all around you, really. So yeah, very, very, very intriguing city. And so I hadn't really done too much research before I went, as I say. And what was quite surprising to me and quite striking was indeed this East Side Gallery. So I was staying near the Ostbahnhof railway station, so it's in the kind of southern eastern area of Berlin. And the very first day that I was there, it was absolutely bucketing down with rain. And in spite of this, walking past this East Side Gallery, I thought, good grief, I'll have a look now, but when it's clearer weather, fairer weather, and the weather indeed did become more clement, thankfully. I'll have to go and have another look at this because it was really, really something. Now, the East Side Gallery is a section of the Berlin Wall. So the Berlin Wall stood from 1961 until 1989 when it fell, something which obviously happened in recent history, which may well be in the consciousness and memory of some of you watching. And it divided West Berlin from East Berlin being situated in East Germany and therefore also in the Eastern Bloc. So it was communist, and this dividing wall was erected, to keep them apart, of course. And the East Side Gallery is a section of the wall that still remains erect, and it's the longest continuous section of wall that still stands. So it's 1,316 metres long, so it's a really good chunk of monument there, just over 1.3 kilometres. And immediately after the wall fell, 118 artists from 21 countries came and plastered some murals all over it. So this kind of ideologically, politically ambiguous, messy kind of monument that's imbued with all of this stuff. People thought, right, we're going to come and put our own stamp on it, and we're going to impose some more messages on it. And I suppose that's the beauty of art and architecture. It can constantly be evolving and appropriating what's going on. It's a dynamic, living piece of history, really, that's not necessarily just set in one time. So let's have a look at some of the murals which are found on this exciting stretch of wall just as you walk along, I don't know, to a restaurant or a bar later on in the evening, or what have you, or to a different part of the city. You can walk along here, and these are some of the murals that you can enjoy. So this image is possibly one of the most iconic in Berlin, most iconic example of Berlin street graffiti, as well as possibly one of the most iconic images on the East Side Gallery, I would say. Now, this image is known in English as "My God, Help Me to Survive This Deadly Love." And it was painted by Russian painter Dmitry Vrubel, who was born in Moscow in 1960. And this image was executed in 1990. So, almost 30 years ago, sorry. And it was therefore one of the original images, since the open-air gallery was officially came into being in that very year. So it's a really curious image, as it represents what's known as a socialist fraternal kiss. So it's two figures, Leonid Brezhnev and Erich Honecker, and they're engaging in this kiss that's a usual kind of form of greeting between two prominent socialist figures. And it's a reproduction of a photograph which was taken in 1979 on the occasion of some 30th anniversary celebrations of the founding of East Germany, of the German Democratic Republic, of the communist Germany. So it was taken on a 30th anniversary celebration of this founding, and now we're looking at it on the 30th anniversary of it having been reproduced as this mural. And it's interesting, it's quite a faithful reproduction of the original photograph in how it's configured. But obviously figures from the background have been taken out, human figures and what have you. It's really just focusing in on this one kiss. Now it takes on such a different message if we think about a photograph. Okay, yes, it was reproduced, but that's really a snapshot of one moment, really. And this very image being recreated in this completely new way, it's vibrant, it's plastered in large scale on the ruin of a monument. It takes on an entirely new meaning, really. Rather than being this snapshot in time, it's immortalized really on the ruin of a monument. So the original photograph was taken to celebrate the founding of this regime, and this reproduction of it in a completely different new medium is instead celebrating, to a degree, the destruction of that very regime. So it's all come full circle, in a sense, the rise and fall, the birth, the death, through this one meeting of two mouths that's represented for us there. And it's also not only in the way that it's been reproduced in a new medium, and what have you, it's not only exciting for that reason and quite challenging in its message, it's also the fact that it is the meeting of two mouths, of two full-grown adult political males. It's not really something that we see too often. Obviously, the message is a socialist one, but it also can be read in a few of these other ways, bearing in mind kind of heteronormative ideals and cultures and what have you. So there are a few ways, really, I think, to interpret it and a lot of different ideas to explore. So I've enjoyed having a look at that image, and let's have a look at another one. So here's another image, also from 1990. This is Marionetten eines abgesetzten Stücks, and that's Mark Engel, who executed it. And this is, an allegorical kind of representation, really, of what happened to East Germany, of the fate of it in the end, the fate of the German Democratic Republic and its government. So these really haunting indeed figures seem to be kind of allegorical representations of the real propagators of the regime, of the system. These puppets, these marionettes, they're broken, they're dying there in that desolate, barren landscape that's juxtaposed again with a quite ominous and yet quite life-giving sky there, really. It looks like there's some kind of storm, something going on that's kind of moving onwards, really, that's already been and gone. And what's left there below is a desolate fate of East Germany. So really exciting, interesting message to be walking past, really, when it's plastered all over the ruin of the regime. So the regime in itself embodied in the ruin of the wall, and then with this kind of image impressed upon it, it really hammers home that message, really, that it failed, the regime. So yeah, really exciting and haunting image there. There's another one here, which I believe is from 2009, Stay Free. This is Christopher Frank. I really like this image, and that's me standing in front of it, because it really just kind of cries out fun and freedom. It's a simple image in a lot of ways. It's that kind of archetypal urban graffiti art sort of style, both the font and the way that the man is depicted. And yeah, he's just staring straight ahead, engaging the spectator, the passerby, in the eye there, and reminding us, stay free, man. Just stay free, stay fresh, stay cool, stay free, and that's that. And that's something that shouldn't really be taken for granted, I suppose, which is something that I suppose all of these images with their various socio-political and what have you messages are really trying to put across. And here's another creative piece from the East Side Gallery. So this section is Alexei Taranin, or Taranin perhaps. Moscow, China, everywhere, Berlin. Yet again, it's just one of these countless really eye-catching murals that's open to all kinds of interpretation, especially in the context within which one walks by or stops to interrogate some more these images, and especially as juxtaposed with all the other murals as well. I think each one is open to a vast array of different interpretations. I mean, why is this? Is it a kangaroo? Why is there a kangaroo there? Why these three cities, and then why everywhere? It's definitely calling into question different notions of place, of city, of cityscape. Really interesting stuff there. I mean, just look at these other images There are countless to walk by and to look into further. I thought in this podcast I would just give us a quick glimpse of the kinds of image that's in store, really, and they're all so different from one another. I mean, it really is a feast for the eyes, for the senses, for the mind, and all really accessible. So there we have it. I hope that's been a nice little introduction to the Berlin East Side Gallery there, and hopefully some of you might go and have a look at it based on this, or if you get the chance, please do. And I'm certainly going to be looking into some of these images in a lot more detail myself. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again for another little exploration of a visual cultural phenomenon or aspect of British culture, or something else entirely. We will have to see, as it's as yet undetermined. So I'll see you again soon, and thanks again. Bye!